Hello everyone. So in this series we are going to cover the Indian economy for UPSC. So basically there will be roughly 15 lectures and we are going to cover the complete syllabus of Indian economy, and this is going to be in English medium. Now as far as Indian economy is concerned, please remember two things: that in prelims, in UPSC prelims, the weightage of Indian economy is roughly 20%. That simply means roughly 1 out of every 5 question is directly or indirectly related to Indian economy. As far as mains is concerned, so in UPSC GS paper 3, GS3, there are two components which are related to Indian economy. One is directly economy related topics, and then second section is related to agriculture. Okay, so the overall weightage is roughly 100 marks. So this is the weightage of Indian economy in the mains section, UPSC mains. So that simply shows that yes, it carry a significant amount of weightage, and that's why you need to understand the subject in a conceptual manner. Now today we are going to start with very basic, and I'm going to start it with inflation. Why inflation? Because it is relatively easier to understand, because everything is happening around you. I don't want to start with GDP and GNP because then it will be too complicated for a fresher candidate. Okay, now let's start. So how inflation, money supply, how they impact our economy, we are going to understand. This lecture is going to be of roughly 2 hours, and after this I can assure you, you will be able to solve all the questions which are being asked from this topic. So you can go through the PYQ, be it UPSC, be it state PCS, you will be able to solve these questions. Okay, now let's start with very basic thing. First thing first, what is inflation? Inflation in a very simple sense, the rise in a price or price rise. Now let's say, I'm giving very basic example. Let's say the price of a pen is 10 rupee. Next year the price got increased to 12. So in this case, what is happening? The price has increased. This is basically referred as inflation. So inflation is a sustained rise in the general price level. Okay, now if I have to present it on a graph, so let's say this is the general price level or average price. I'm oversimplifying it. This is average price. Okay, now if the price level is below this line, this is going to be inflation. Let's say I'm saying the general price is 10 rupee. This is 12 rupee. This is point A. And let's say this is point B. The price here is, let's say, 15 rupee. Okay. So both these cases will be considered as inflation. Now there is another term, that is disinflation. Disinflation basically means just like your battery is facing the problem of discharge. So basically this simply means the rate of inflation is slowing down. Inflation is there, but the rate of inflation is slowing down. That simply means, let's say I'm considering 3 scenario: 10, 12, 15 and 20. Let's say this is scenario C. Now if I see that the price in these 3 cases, that is above general price, so technically all these reflect inflation. But if I say that in comparison to this one, this is having a relatively lower rate of inflation, so that reflect the case of disinflation. Inflation, disinflation. How to remember it? It simply remember it just like a battery. So if your battery is going down from 100% to 90%, then 80%, that is discharge. Similarly in this case also, this is disinflation. Now what if the price level is below general price level? Let's say, let's consider one more example. This is point E and the price is 8 rupee. Okay, this will be considered as an example of deflation. What is deflation? In a very simple sense, understand, the price is going down below the general price level. So it is opposite of inflation. In inflation, understand, in case of inflation, we are saying that the price is above the general price level. But in case of disinflation, the price is below the general price level. Now understand, if the price is below general price level, that simply means the items are now available at a cheaper price. If items are available at a cheaper price, that means I can purchase more. So can I simply say that inflation reduces my ability to buy items? Let me rephrase it again. Inflation, which simply means the price has increased. Since the price has increased, I won't be able to buy same quantity in same amount of money. Let's consider one example. The same example. Previously the price was 10 rupee. Okay, so in this case the price was 10 rupee and I had, let's say, 100 rupee. 100 rupee, someone had 100 rupee and the price of each pen was 10 rupee. So how many pen a person can buy from the 100 rupee? 10 pens, right? But if the price has increased to 20 rupee, in that case how many pens can be purchased? In this case, because price has increased, so what will happen? The person will be able to buy less quantity. So in a very simple sense, when I am saying inflation, it simply means two things should be there in your mind. Let me write it here. So whenever I am saying inflation, it simply means A, the price has increased. Okay, that's one thing. Second thing, because the price has increased, can I simply say my ability to buy items or my purchasing power? Purchasing power basically means ability to buy items. My purchasing power has gone down. Why it has gone down? Because now items are costly. Since now items are costly, I won't be able to buy the same quantity in same amount of money. I need more money to buy. Let's consider the same example. Previously I had 100 rupee. Okay, now let's say in last year, that is in 2025, the price was 10 rupee. And in 2026 the price is, let's say, 20 rupee. Okay, so in this case how many pens I can buy? I can buy 10 pens. And in the second case, how many pens I can buy? I can buy only 5 pens. So that's why it is often said that inflation is going to erode your savings. Erode basically means it will reduce the ability of that money to buy the items. And that's why it is often said that whenever we save our money in the bank, okay, now if bank is not going to offer me good interest rate, technically my money will grow, but its ability to buy items will go down. Again, let me simplify it using one example. Let's say you had 1 lakh rupee. 1 lakh rupee. Now let's consider one scenario. You deposited this money in the bank and the bank is offering you 6% interest rate. Okay, what if the inflation rate is 7%? What will happen in this case? In this case, please understand one thing. In this case, your money that will grow. That simply means because you are getting interest. So if you are depositing, let's say 1 lakh rupee, so you will get an interest of 6,000 rupee. So money is now 1,06,000 rupee. But the problem is inflation is growing faster than interest rate. Therefore, the ability of this 1,06,000 will be lesser than the ability of 1 lakh rupee. That's why we often say that inflation reduces the purchasing power of money. Okay, so we have covered inflation, we have covered disinflation, we have covered deflation. Now there is one more concept, that is reflation. As the name suggests, re basically means, you might have heard this term, review or revision. Re basically means again we are going through the same situation. So in this case the price has increased. That is reflation. So let's consider it using the same example. This is the price level. So previously it was like this, so it went like this, and then suddenly there was another spike in the price. So these are 4 important concepts. If you understand them, technically over a period of time they will be interconnected, and over a period of time, whenever you will notice that okay, RBI is changing the money supply, more or less the intention is to control this part only. Okay, now let's revise this entire thing. So what was inflation? Inflation, in a very simple sense, price has gone up. Because price has gone up, the purchasing power or the ability to buy item, purchasing power, that has gone down. Okay, what is deflation? Deflation basically means the price has gone down. Since the price has gone down, I can buy more items. So my purchasing power, that is PP, I'm just writing it as PP. So my PP has increased. And then there is reflation. What is reflation? Reflation, in a very simple sense, the price has gone up after a downfall. And then there is a disinflation. In case of disinflation, please remember, inflation is there, but the rate of inflation has gone down. So rate of inflation simply means that the price rise, the speed of price rise, that has slowed down, but price is still rising. Okay, so this is related to rate of inflation. Now understand one more simple thing. Okay, so we have covered this part. Understand one more thing. What is the relationship between the inflation and the money supply? Understand. Let's say we have 10 pens in the market and people have limited money. So not everyone will try to purchase that pen. But what will happen if everyone will have money? Or leave about that pen example. Let's say everyone is having the money to purchase a BMW. But the production capacity of company is same. What will happen? Since everyone is having money, they will try to buy it. And since they will try to buy it, now what is happening? Almost everyone is having money. That simply means they are ready to offer higher price. Because there is a competition among buyers, they will say, okay, I will offer you more price if you will deliver the car today. Now what is happening? Now money is there, but we don't have those many number of cars. So basically what will happen? There will be a competition and this will lead to inflation. That simply means the price of the car will increase. You might have noticed similar kind of example in case of, let's say, booking a flight ticket during your festivals. Let's say you want to go back to your home on the occasion of Diwali or on the occasion of New Year. Usually you will notice a trend. Almost everyone is going back to their home. So the demand of these tickets, that has increased. And since the demand has increased, someone is willing to pay higher price for the same ticket. And since someone is willing to pay higher price, technically what will happen? The price of the ticket will increase, and that is nothing but inflation. Okay, now understand the concept of a purchasing power. We have already seen that inflation reduces the purchasing power of money. Purchasing power of money simply means how many items can be purchased from that amount of money. Similarly, over a period of time, what happens is that over a period of time, inflation increases. That means the price of the products increases. If the price increases, that simply means capacity to buy items goes down. Okay, so that is nothing but purchasing power. Now, just remember this equation. Even though I have explained this concept, just remember this concept that the purchasing power of money is adversely impacted by inflation. Why I'm saying adversely? Because technically the relation is inverse. If the ability of money will be higher, I can buy more and more items. But that will happen only if inflation is low. If inflation is high, that means prices are increasing rapidly. So, of course, my ability to buy items will go down. Okay. In this case, there is one more term, that is purchasing power parity. So, basically, this concept help us in evaluating the economic performance of countries. Now, let's try to understand it using one example. Just a second. Let's say two countries are there. USA is there, and let's say India is there. The currency of USA is dollar, the currency of India is rupee. If we have to compare the economic size of these two countries, it is not possible to compare them directly. Why it is not possible? Because again, the currencies are different. The cost of living is different. Cost of living basically means how much money you need to live in a particular place. Okay. So the cost of living is different. The salaries are different. So how we are going to compare the economy of India to the economy of the USA? There must be some common parameter, right? So for that purpose, we use the concept of triple P. What is triple P? That is purchasing power parity. What is parity? Parity simply means equality. So what we are doing? We are, let's say, doing one thing. We are purchasing 5 items. Let's say we purchased one pen, one pencil, one eraser, and let's say what else? A water bottle. I'm just oversimplifying. Let's say we purchased these 4 items and the cost was, let's say, $100. Now, if I have to purchase the same items in India, what will be its cost in rupee? So that is, let's assume that the cost is 1000 rupees. So in this case, what I am doing, I'm just picking a basket of items. This is basket. Okay. So I'm picking a basket of items and I am trying to find out the price of this basket in US and in India. And then I am putting them at equal level. In a very simple sense, I am trying to find out what will be the cost of the basket of items in USA and what will be the cost of same basket of items in India. Now I am comparing them. So that is referred as purchasing power parity. Okay. Now understand, as far as purchasing power parity is concerned, India is third biggest economy. So India is third biggest economy. China and USA, two leading economy. That simply means they are on first and second position and India is on third position. That is the meaning of concept of purchasing power parity. Now coming back to our original topic. Okay, so we have covered what is purchasing power of money, what is purchasing power parity. Now next is base effect. Understand it in this way. Whenever we are saying that okay, we have to compare inflation, so we have to understand the difference in the price level. Let's say I'm just considering the example of 3 years, 2023, 2024 and 2025. Let's say the price of this pen is 10 rupee. Price has increased to 20 rupee and then the price has increased to 35 rupee. Okay, in this case, in the first case, how much is the increment of the price? So 10 rupee increment is there. In this case, how much is the increment of the price? So 15 rupees increment is there. But if you have to find it in percentage, so in this case, how much is the increment? Technically it is 100%. In this case, if I have to find out the increment in the price, it is going to be less than 100%. Less than 100%. Why it is less than 100%? Even though in this case only 10 rupee has increased, in this case 15 rupees has increased. So this is happening because of the base effect. In a very simple sense, understand it this way. What is base effect? Base effect simply means because of the smaller base, this 10 rupees is small base in comparison to 20 rupee. So because of the smaller base, a minor change will appear significant. Because of a bigger base, even a bigger change will appear smaller. That is the concept of base year. Okay, so whenever we are having the measurement of inflation, technically, if last year inflation was quite high, so this year it will not appear that much significant. But last year there was no inflation, and this year, even if there is going to be a minor change in the price, then what will happen? Then it will show high percentage in a change. That is referred as base effect. And what is base year? Base year is nothing but the year with which we compare. Base year. So it is a reference year. That is the base year. For example, if I ask you one question, what was your height when you were in 10th class? So let's say you were in your 10th class in, let's say, 2020. Okay, so that simply means I am saying in 2020 what was your height. So in this case 2020 is the reference year or the year with which we are comparing our current level. Okay, so similarly we have a base year. Okay, next is point to point measurement. Now what is this point to point measurement? Understand it this way. Let's say we have to compare your performance, academic performance. Okay, now let's say you had appeared in 3 different tests. One test was of history and second one was of geography. History, geography and polity. Now the score in history, in geography and in polity was like this. Let's say it was out of 10 marks, or you can consider it out of 20 as well if you don't revise things on your time. Okay, let's say this was the performance in test 1. Now let's say in test 2 the performance was 6, 11 and let's say 8. So now can I say that I performed better in test 2 in history? Of course not. Why not? Because if I really want to evaluate my performance in history, what I will have to do? I will have to compare the marks of history test 2 with the marks of history test 1, right? This is how we compare things. Similarly, if we have to compare inflation, let's say we have to compare inflation in the month of May 2026. So would it be wise to compare the inflation of May 2026 to the inflation of January 2025? No, it won't make any sense, because May and January are 2 different months, 2 different time frames, and usually inflation have a very peculiar phenomena. Temperature, time, all these factors play a significant role. Let me give you a very basic example. In summer, the spoilage rate or the wastage rate of perishable item is quite high, and that's why what will happen, the price of these items will be higher in summer. Okay, so what we are saying, that whenever you are trying to compare inflation, let's say we are trying to measure the inflation of May in this case, so we have to measure it with the inflation of same reference point, that is, let's say May 2025. Okay, this is same reference point, and this is basically referred as point inflation. What is point to point inflation measurement? In a very simple sense, whenever we are taking the reference point should be similar so that we can compare. They usually say whenever you are trying to compare, don't try to compare apple and oranges. When you have to compare apple with apple, orange with orange. So this is the literal meaning of that simple statement, that we have to compare the same reference point whenever we are trying to measure the inflation. Okay, so that was similar concept. Now coming back to this thing, we have covered this. Now coming to the inflation premium. Understand, let me give you a very simple example. Let's say there is a person lender L and there is a person buyer B. Okay, this person has given 100 rupee to this person, 100 rupee, and after the time period, let's say this person has taken money for 1 year, so after 1 year this person is going to return the money, let's say 100 rupee plus the principal amount of 6 rupee or 6%. This is going to be interest. Now understand one thing, in this case, let's say the rate of inflation or inflation, let's say it was 7%. Okay, now understand, if we have a scenario like this, who will be benefited in this case? The person has borrowed 100 rupee, the person has returned 106. Rate of inflation is 7%. So who will be at the better position in this case? Now understand why it is going to be beneficial for borrower. It is going to be beneficial for borrower. Why so? Because the 100 rupee will not have same purchasing power. Why it will not have same purchasing power? The inflation has eroded the purchasing power. Now let's consider one very practical example. Okay, let's say price of potato. Let's say the price of potato, this was when the money was let's say when this person L gave money to person B, at that time the price of the potato was, let's say, 20 rupee per kg. So can I simply say this person has given 5 kg potato? Now when this person returned this amount, let's say at that time the price was 25 rupee per kg. I am taking simple numbers just for the sake of calculation. So in this case, how much quantity of potato can be purchased from the same 100 rupee? 4 kg. Can I simply say, understand it, can I simply say that I borrowed 5 kg of potato from someone and I returned only 4 kg? So who is in a better position in this case? This lender or this borrower? So basically what is happening? This lender is going to lose 1 kg. If you see simple maths, okay, and this borrower is getting the benefit of 1 kg. That's why it is often said that inflation is beneficial for borrower. But understand, in this case the assumption is that the rate of inflation is higher than the interest rate. Okay, so that's why it is beneficial. Inflation, this is beneficial for borrower, and this borrower is also known as debtor, and it is harmful for lender or creditor. Why it is harmful? Because we are assuming a scenario that the interest rate is lower than the inflation rate. Okay, this benefit which is there for the borrower, this is known as inflation premium. Now have a look at this definition. What is inflation premium? Inflation premium simply means the benefit received by borrower when the value of the money they must pay back decreases due to inflation. In a very simple sense, I borrowed money over a period of time. Because of inflation, the value of that money has gone down, and that's why technically I will be in a better position. So that is the meaning. This benefit is referred as the inflation premium. Okay, in the same example we have discussed the recent example. In that example, I borrowed 5 kg potato from you, and subsequently I paid you 100 rupee back along with the interest. So that simply means principal plus interest was returned, but this principal will not have same capability. Now this 100 rupee will not be able to purchase 5 kg. Instead of that, it will be able to buy only 4 kg. That is the inflation premium. Second thing is inflation tax. In a very simple sense, when items are costly, we are able to buy less quantity in the same amount of money. So technically it appear as if government has increased the tax, because money is same but quantity is not same. The quantity has gone down. Why? Because the price has increased. In this case, the consumer feel, people like you and me, they feel that even if they are having same quantity of money, they are not able to buy same quantity of items. So we feel that we are paying more and more taxation to the government, and that is referred as inflation tax. So basically inflation act as a tax. So previously we just discussed one example. I am going to continue that example. Previously I was able to buy 5 kg potato from 100 rupee. Now I am able to buy only 4 kg. So can I simply say I am able to purchase less number of or less quantity of potato, because now kind of it feels that I am paying more taxation. So my money is going towards taxation. This is just a concept. Why we feel that we are paying more tax? Because of inflation, the price has increased. So people feel that they are paying more tax, and that's why they are able to purchase less quantity of items. Is it clear? So far we have covered a few simple concepts. See, sometimes UPSC ask very conceptual question, and these concepts may appear very simple, but they will help you in eliminating a lot of options if the question is related to inflation topic. Okay, so we have covered what is inflation, we have covered what is deflation, we have covered what is disinflation, we have covered what is reflation. Then we have covered purchasing power parity, inflation premium. What is inflation premium? The benefit to the borrower because of inflation. What is inflation tax? Technically, because of inflation, price increases, we are able to buy less quantity, so we feel we are paying more taxation to the government. Now we are going to discuss the different types of inflation. We know what is inflation. What is the factor behind it? We are going to discuss them. First is a demand pull inflation. The name itself is self-explanatory. The demand is higher than the supply. So what will happen? We have considered the example of that flight ticket. In case of festivals, the price of the ticket is very high. Why the price is high? Because a lot of people try to book the ticket. That simply means the demand of ticket is higher than the supply. Another example, the price of the fruits during Navratri season. So what will happen? The demand of the fruits has gone up, and therefore what will happen? The price will also go up. That is referred as demand pull. In a very simple sense, it is considered as too much money chasing too few goods or items. That simply means we are having fixed quantity of items, or the quantity of items is limited. Money is there to buy those items. More and more people are willing to buy those items. Suddenly, let's consider the same example. Suddenly, if everyone will have money to buy BMW or maybe buy iPhone, the production capacity of company is same, but suddenly people got the money. So what will happen? That will lead to inflation, and subsequently the economy may collapse. That's why you might have seen this debate in the social media that why does not the government print more and more money and distribute it to the poor people? What will happen? If the money is distributed to the poor people without work, they will have money, they will spend that money. Suddenly the demand will increase, the production capacity is same. This will lead to demand pull inflation, and subsequently it may lead to collapse of economy. That is demand pull. Second type of inflation is cost push inflation. As the name suggests, cost push basically means the cost of production has increased. Let's say we are manufacturing this kurta. Okay, so we need raw material, then there will be a labor cost, there will be a transportation cost. If suddenly because of any factor the price of the raw material has increased, what will happen? The company will increase the price of this product. So now the price has increased, not because of demand but because of the production cost. This type of inflation is referred as a cost push inflation, or I can simply write production side inflation. In this case, what is happening? this is a demand side inflation. Demand side inflation. What is demand side inflation? In a very simple sense, demand has increased, so now more and more people are willing to buy that item, and that's why what will happen, the price will increase. Third is structural or bottleneck inflation. Now understand why the name structure or why the name bottleneck. Let me just give you one simple example. Let's say this is bottle. Okay, I'm sure you can see it. So the neck of the bottle is narrow. That simply means what will happen, the design of the bottle is like this, that at the neck the supply is limited. So let's say it is like this. So in this case, suddenly the supply is limited at this point because of the structural issue. The structure of the bottle is like that, that supply will be limited. This is referred as bottleneck. Now, since the supply is limited, what will happen? The price will increase. So, for example, you might have noticed that in case of items like tomato, usually we witness the inflation in the price of these items. Why that happens? Because we don't have proper storage system, we don't have proper infrastructure for that. So this is because of inadequate structure. The problem is there in the structure itself. This type of inflation is referred as the structural inflation or bottleneck inflation. Next is monetary inflation. Monetary basically means what? Monetary authority. Who is the monetary authority of our country? It is RBI. What is RBI? It is Reserve Bank of India. So RBI is responsible for printing new currency. Now understand. Let's say they have decided that we are going to print new currency and we are going to distribute it to everyone. Let's say government decided and government instructed the RBI governor that okay, print more money. I'm oversimplifying, of course. This is not how things work, but this is just for your understanding. Okay. Now government decided to distribute. What will happen? We have already discussed this scenario that suddenly people will have money, but we won't have the production capacity to fulfill that demand suddenly. So this will lead to inflation, and that type of inflation, because of printing more money, this type of inflation is referred as the monetary inflation. So in this case, what is happening? We are printing more and more money. So because of printing more and more money, what will happen? Because of printing more money, it will lead to higher money supply, and because of higher money supply, what will happen? There will be inflation. Then there is a profit-induced inflation. In a very simple sense, this is also known as greedflation. Greedflation. What is this greedflation? Let me give you a very basic example. Let's say in telecom sector, we have two major players. One is Airtel and one is Jio. These are two leading players. Since they don't have much competition, they can increase the price, and as a consumer, we don't have much choice. They can increase price just to improve their profitability. Okay. Now, in this case, what is happening? The production cost is not increased. The production is cost is not increasing. The company has increased the price just to improve their profit margin. This is referred as greedflation. That simply means company is now becoming greedy for more and more profit. Usually, this kind of inflation is there in those sectors where we have limited competition. For example, let's say tomorrow IRCTC, that is Indian Railway, they decide to increase the price. Okay. Now they don't have competition, so of course they can, and as a consumer we will not have choice to migrate to some other option. So this type of inflation is referred as greedflation. And last in this section is built-in inflation or wage price spiral. Now to explain this, let me just consider one example. Let's say this is factory. In this factory there are workers. These workers are basically working to produce biscuits. These biscuits are sold in market, and let's say the price of the biscuit packet is 5 rupees, and the wage basically means salary of the workers. Let's say it is 10,000 rupees. I'm oversimplifying again. Okay. Now let's say over a period of time, the price in the market has increased. So instead of 5, now the item is available in 6. Similarly, the inflation will be there in case of all other items. So what these workers will say? They will say, sir, now the inflation has increased, so please increase our salary as well. Please give us increment. The employer will think, yes, we have to increase the salary, but of course we cannot increase salary from our own pocket. So before increasing salary, technically what they will try to do? They will try to increase the price of their own product. So previously it was available in 5 rupees. Then they will try to increase the cost of that product so that they can pay more salary to their workers. Now in this case, what is happening? Because company has increased the wage or the salary of the workers, the company will increase the price of their product. Okay, over a period of time, because of the price, every company will increase the price of their product. So what will happen? There will be inflation in the economy, and because of that, what will happen? Because of that, over a period of time, workers will demand further increment, and this cycle, this will continue. So in a very simple sense, this says that the general inflation in the economy is increasing. Because of the general inflation, the workers are demanding higher wages or higher salary. Because of that, what is happening? The companies are increasing the salary of their workers, but before that, they are increasing the price of their product. And simply this cycle continues. This is referred as wage, this is wage, this is price, wage price spiral, or this is also known as built-in inflation. Built-in inflation. Why it is referred as built-in inflation? Understand it in a very simple sense. It is built in because it is part of the system. Now let's assume a situation. The company is saying, okay, we will not increase your salary. What workers will do? They will say, okay, we will start working for someone else who is willing to pay us higher price. So company will have to increase the salary of its workers. Okay, now how company is going to increase the salary? They cannot increase the salary by cutting their profit, because then they will not be able to sustain their business. So how they can increase the salary? They can increase the salary by increasing the price of the product. And this is how this spiral continues. So that is referred as wage price spiral. Next type is persistent or sticky inflation. Now, as the name suggests, persistent basically means this inflation is there for a long time and it is not changing frequently. So for example, let's say throughout the season, the price of the tomatoes was more or less high. That simply means the inflation was there throughout the season. Even if the government tried a lot of things, the price is more or less there. And that is referred as a persistent or sticky inflation. Just remember the keyword and then you will be able to understand it. Okay. So in this case, it is the prices are sticky and they do not change frequently. Okay. Then there is one more situation, skewed inflation. Skew basically means limited. Let's say limited means rest of the economy is doing fine. Rest of the economy does not have that much inflation. But in case of certain items, the price has increased significantly. One classic example would be during COVID, the demand of oxygen cylinders increased tremendously. Because of this, the price of oxygen cylinders increased. Even though rest of the economy was more or less doing fine, the inflation was not that much. But in case of oxygen cylinders, it was very high. The inflation was very high. This is referred as a skewed inflation. Or another example would be, let's say in case of vegetables, the price of onions, tomatoes, that has increased. The price of rest of the vegetables is more or less same. That would be another example of skewed inflation. Okay. Then there is a shrinkflation. What is shrink? Shrink, just remember, shrink means to contract. Okay. Let me give you a very basic example. Parle-G. Price of the Parle-G is same. How they are able to maintain or how they are able to cope up with inflation? They can maintain the same price, or most of these packaged item companies, they can maintain the same price by reducing the quantity. So in this case, rather than increasing the price of the packet, they are reducing the quantity in the packet. You can notice this same type of principle in most of the packaged items which are specially price sensitive. For example, notice the quantity in your curd packet. Amul previously used to had the curd packet of 400 grams. Now what they have done, they have reduced the quantity in that, and instead of 400 grams, they are giving 380 grams. So what they have done, technically, rather than increasing the price, they have reduced the quantity in the same price. That means they are saying, okay, we will give you this product in the same price, but we will give you less quantity. So this is another way to deal with the inflation. And usually the companies which are involved in the packaged food items business, they follow this kind of practice. So that is shrinkflation. And last one is stagflation. Stag basically means stagnant. Okay. Now before discussing the stagflation, let me just help you in understanding the basic impact of inflation on the economy. Let's say there is a demand driven inflation. So demand is there. Because of this demand, what will happen? Companies, or because of this demand, let's say price will increase. This is demand pull inflation. Now what companies will do? Companies will try to fulfill this demand. They produce more. Why they want to produce more? Because they see that there is a demand. Let's say in a very simple sense, let me give you a very basic example. During COVID, almost every company started producing masks. Why they started producing masks? Because there was a demand of masks. Will the same company produce mask now? Of course not. Why not? Because now there is no such demand. So if there will be demand, companies will try to fulfill that demand, and that is how they earn profit. Okay. So in usual scenarios, inflation is good, because technically inflation, what is inflation? Price rise. So inflation reflects that demand is there, and to fulfill that demand, we can produce more. But in case of stagflation, the economy is stagnant, thus there is inflation. Now what is meaning of stagnant? That simply means it is not growing. Now understand one simple concept, and then you will be able to understand the Phillips curve as well. When I am saying that there is a demand in the economy, and to fulfill that demand, companies will produce more. If they will produce more, technically they will hire more people. Let's say previously there was a factory of biscuit, and it used to produce 50 packets, and for that, let's say they have hired 25 employees. I'm oversimplifying it. 50 packets and 25 employees. If they need to produce 150 packets, they need to hire more people. So if there will be more demand, companies will try to produce more. For that, they will have to hire more people. So if they are going to hire more people, more and more people will get the salary, right? Okay. If they will get salary, what will happen? They will spend that money. If they will spend that money, it will lead to demand. So can I simply say, if there is a demand in the economy, that will lead to more and more employment in the economy. If there is a demand in the economy, that will lead to more and more employment in the economy. And if there will be more and more employment in the economy, can I simply say it will lead to less and less unemployment. So if employment opportunities are increasing, by default, what do I mean by that? When I'm saying employment opportunities are increasing, that simply means unemployment will go down. Okay. So if there will be demand, price will increase. If there will be demand, companies will produce more. How they will produce more? They will set up new factories. They will hire more workers. If they will hire more workers, they will pay salaries to those workers. If these workers will earn money, they will spend that money. If they will spend money, it will lead to more demand, and subsequently this will be a cycle of growth. Normally, this is the cycle which every economy wants to achieve. What if there is a problem in the supply chain, and because of that problem, inflation is there? So in this case, we refer it to stagflation. Stagflation basically means my economy is stagnant. It is not growing. So that simply means two things are happening. A, the production or economic growth, this is stagnant. And second problem is unemployment is there. So it is a combination of, stagflation is a combination of three scenarios. One, low or stagnant economic growth. B, there is unemployment. C, there is inflation. Now why there is a inflation? Technically, it could be because of any factor. Let me give you a very simple example. Let's say during COVID, the supply chain was disrupted, and because of that, the supply of the fruits and vegetables was not proper. During COVID, there was a lockdown, and because of lockdown, factories were closed. So the economic growth or economic output, that was limited. Since factories were closed, that simply means there was high unemployment as well. Plus, because of lockdown restrictions, the supply chain was disrupted. So the supply of the items was not proper. So what was happening? Because of poor supply or low supply, the price of the items increased. And that is why there was inflation, and that is a simple example of a stagflation. Okay, so far we have covered these type of inflation. Next is categories of inflation based on the rate of inflation. That means how quickly the prices are increasing. So if the rate of inflation is 3% or less, that simply means the prices are increasing, but they are increasing at a very decent pace. They are not increasing rapidly. This type of inflation is known as creeping. Okay. Then there is walking or trotting inflation, if the rate of inflation is from 3 to 7%. If the rate of inflation is from 7 to 10%, that means in comparison to previous year, the prices has increased by 10% this year. This is referred as running inflation. If the rate of inflation is more than 10% per year, that is referred as galloping inflation. And if the rate of inflation is more than 100%, or in certain cases it can be even 1000%, that is referred as hyperinflation. In this case it is very difficult to control the inflation, because it is a combination of factors. So creeping, walking, running, galloping, and hyper. Okay, so these are the categories on the basis of rate of inflation. That simply means how quickly the prices are increasing. Okay, now let's try to understand how we measure inflation. We know what is inflation. Inflation is nothing but price rise. Okay, but how we are going to measure it? So in order to measure inflation, we usually follow these methods. See, we can measure inflation from the perspective of consumer, we can measure inflation from the perspective of wholesaler, or we can measure inflation from the perspective of producer. In a very simple sense, we are saying what is the difference in the price for a consumer, what is the difference in the price for a wholesaler or bulk buyer, or what is the difference in the price for the producer. This is measured through CPI. What is CPI? That is Consumer Price Inflation Index. Let me simplify that. Let's say a consumer is buying these items. This is there, this highlighter is there, this pen is there, and this diary is there. Okay, last year, let's say the consumer purchased these 4 items in 100 rupees. What will be the price of these items this year? Let's say it is 105. So there is a difference of 5 rupees. This is how we are going to compare the inflation. Okay. Similarly, what will be the increment in the price of these items for the wholesaler, and what will be the increment in the price for the producer? Please remember that it is not necessary that the rate of inflation is same at all levels. So why it will be different? Because usually it could be a possibility that the price for the producer has not increased that much, but just to improve their profit margin, the producer increased the price for the wholesaler or increased the price for the consumer. Okay, so that is how we measure inflation. Now, as far as this CPI is concerned, it is Consumer Price Inflation Index. Okay, we have different type of CPI. One is CPI R. What is CPI R? R is for rural. That simply means for rural area. One is CPI U, that is for urban area, and then there is a combined CPI, that is CPI C. So whenever we say that okay, we are trying to measure inflation, technically we use this indicator, that is CPI C. C means combined. So RBI track this inflation, and for that RBI is given a target that they need to monitor inflation in the rate of 4 plus minus 2%. Okay, let me explain one more simple scenario. See, very simple straightforward question can be asked. If inflation means increment in the price, why don't we want 0% inflation? Don't you think that is going to be good, that there is no increment in the price year after year? Understand, if the price is same, that simply means it shows very poor demand. So moderate inflation is necessary for the economic growth. If inflation is too high, that means the prices are increasing at a very high speed and the people will not be able to afford the items. So inflation need to be moderate. If it is too high, that means the prices are very high and people will not be able to afford the items. Let's say the price of the milk, suddenly it has increased to, let's say, 500 rupee per liter. What will happen? The common man will not be able to buy the milk. But if the price of the milk is same since, let's say, last 10 years, what will happen? It shows that demand is not increasing. So in either case, it is not good for economy. That's why it is referred that a moderate inflation is always desirable. It is always desirable for economic growth. Okay, so that is the target. Who has given this target? It has been given by government. Who monitor this target or who maintain it? It is responsibility of MPC. What is MPC? It is Monetary Policy Committee. Okay, MPC. Now please remember, MPC is a statutory body as per RBI Act of 1934. That's one thing. It was set up on the recommendation of Urjit Patel Committee, and it is 6-member committee, out of which 3 members are appointed by Government of India and 3 members are from RBI. Please remember that this MPC is chaired by RBI Governor. One more thing, the decision in this MPC are taken by majority. So if there is a tie, the RBI Governor will have a casting vote. Okay. So these are some of the things related to MPC. Now, so we have seen 3 types of CPI, that is CPI-U, CPI-R and CPI-C. Apart from that, 3 more types of CPI are issued, that is CPI-AL. AL simply means agriculture labor. So it is for agriculture labor. Why we are having a different CPI for different type of people? Because understand, through CPI what we are trying to measure? We are trying to measure the rate of inflation. Now please understand, the consumption pattern of these categories of people is different. Someone who is living in rural area, their consumption pattern is going to be entirely different from someone who is living in urban area. So that's why we are having different type of CPI. CPI-AL is there, then CPI-RL is there. RL is for rural labor. Now what is the difference in rural labor and agriculture labor? This is person who is engaged in the agricultural activity. This is someone who is living in rural area, but the activities are related to some other sector. Let's say someone is involved in the construction sector. In that case, they are not agricultural labor, but still they are labor. Then there is IW. What is IW? That is industrial worker. Industrial worker. So on the basis of work activity, these 3 types of CPI are released, and they are released by Labor Bureau, and Labor Bureau is under Ministry of Labor and Employment. These are 6 types of CPI. Similarly, if we have to measure the inflation from the perspective of wholesaler, that is measured through WPI. If we have to measure the inflation from the perspective of producer, that is measured through PPI, that is Producer Price Index. Now understand 2 more things, and then we are going to move on to the next topic. Whenever we have to measure inflation, we include some items and we exclude some items. If we have to measure inflation from the consumer perspective, we call it CPI, that is Consumer Price Inflation Index. In case of India, please remember one thing, that we are heavily dependent on the imports of crude oil. So the price of crude oil fluctuate a lot. That's why this is referred as a volatile item. Volatile item. Why it is volatile? Volatile basically means the price fluctuates a lot. Price changes a lot. Another item for which the price changes a lot is food items or perishable items. Why price increases or fluctuate a lot in this case? We have covered the structural issue. What is structural issue? That we don't have proper storage, we don't have proper transportation, we don't have proper supply chain. So these 2 items, they are quite volatile. They are quite volatile, and therefore these items are not considered in our regular inflation. They are volatile. Volatile meaning price fluctuate a lot, fluctuate or vary a lot. So that's why these items are not considered in the calculation of core inflation. Core inflation. So in a very simple sense, understand 2 phenomena now. One is headline inflation. Headline inflation will have volatile plus non-volatile. What are volatile? Food and fuel. What are non-volatile? No, rest of the items are non-volatile. What is core inflation? Core is basically headline. I can write it this way, headline minus volatile. Or in a very simple sense, we are trying to measure the inflation in case of items except food and fuel. So very simple question can be asked in UPSC prelims. Which of the following is not covered in the core inflation? Please remember, core inflation does not cover volatile items such as food and fuel. Why food is not covered? Because of structural issue, inflation is there. Why fuel is not covered? Because it is imported item. We don't have that much control over the price. So just to understand the inflation pattern, we follow headline as well as core inflation. Okay, now let's read this. Headline inflation. Headline inflation is total inflation in any economy, including volatile food and fuel. And in India, it is CPIC. We have covered what is CPIC. What is core inflation? Core inflation exclude what? Food and fuel. Then there is one more concept, super core. Super core exclude food, fuel and housing. So there is one more component, that is housing. That is the concept of headline, core and super core. Now there is one more concept, that is GDP. Understand, GDP refers to gross. Gross means what? Gross means total. Domestic means what? Domestic means within India. And product means what? Product means either goods or services. So in a very simple sense, GDP calculate the value of all the goods and services produced within India. Please remember the meaning of this term D. That means we are talking about the items which are produced in India. Since we are talking about all the items, that's why it is also known as implicit price deflator. That simply means how much is the deviation in the prices of items in economy, it is reflected by it. Okay, let's say we compare the GDP of last year to the GDP of this year. So technically we are also including the changes in the price. We are going to cover more about GDP in a separate chapter. In this case, we are talking it from the perspective of inflation only. Okay, so now understand 2-3 things. Will a GDP cover imported items? Understand, no, it will not. Why it will not? Because the definition itself is saying that we are going to cover only those items which are there, which are produced in India. When I am saying imported, that means they are produced in some other country. Okay. Now, one more question. Will CPI, what was CPI? Consumer Price Index. Will CPI cover imported items? Think about it. CPI has nothing to do with the production. Where it has been produced, it is irrelevant in case of CPI. CPI just focus on the items which are being consumed by the consumer and how much is the price increment in those items. That is the role of CPI. So CPI includes items like fuel. We have covered that in case of core inflation, items like fuel are excluded, but in case of headline inflation, items like food and fuel are covered. Fuel, we import fuel. Of course, roughly 85% of our demand are met through imports. So yes, imported items are covered in CPI, but not in this GDP or this implicit price deflator. Okay, now just read this. What is GDP deflator or implicit price deflator? It is a comprehensive measure of inflation calculated by the ratio of nominal GDP and real GDP. It excludes imports. Why it excludes? Because the definition itself say that it talks about, or it covers only the domestically produced items. That's one thing. Now coming to the nominal and real GDP. Let's say, what is GDP? Gross domestic product. Let's say we produced pens and we produced paper. Now let's say we produced 10 pen and we produced 5 packet of paper. Let's say the price last year or price in 2025 and this is price in 2026. In this case, let's say it is 10 and 15 and in this case it is 20 and 30. So how much will be the size of GDP in 2025? Keep it simple, 10 into 10 plus 20 into 10. So it is going to be 100 and it is going to be 100. So the size of GDP is going to be 200. This GDP is our base GDP or reference GDP. This is referred as real GDP or GDP at constant price level. Constant price. Why we are saying it at constant price? Because we are comparing it. So it is reference price. Reference price. Right now in our economy, the base year or the reference year was changed recently and the current reference year is, it is also known as base year. So the current reference year is 22-23. What was the previous year? Previously it was 2011 and 12. That was the base year. Okay, now understand. In case of 2026, if I am going to compare, I am assuming that the production quantity is same. Production quantity is still same. So into 10 into 5, how much will be the size of my GDP in this case? It is going to be 150. It is going to be 150. So technically it is going to be 300. Now this is going to be nominal GDP or this is going to be GDP at current price. So in a very simple sense, nominal GDP will include inflation and real GDP will exclude inflation. And that's why we usually say that, okay, this is going to reflect, if we are going to compare them, this is going to reflect the inflation in the economy, overall inflation in the economy. Okay, so that is related to the implicit price deflator. So we have covered CPI, we have covered WPI, we have covered PPI. Please remember one thing, previously before 2026 we were using CPI and WPI only. Now government is focusing on the PPI as well. Why government want to focus on PPI? Please remember, WPI covered only goods. So let me write it. CPI covered goods and services both. WPI covered only goods. In our economy, we are going to cover this part in detail in the economic growth chapter. In our economy, service sector contribute roughly 55%. So that was not reflected in WPI. That's why what government is saying that, okay, we will now set up a new mechanism and we will start this PPI as well, that is producer price index. So over a period of time, what we are doing for the next 5 years, we will produce this as well as this. Over a period of time, we will phase this down. That means we will discontinue it and we will switch to PPI. That is the meaning. Now there is one more index, and that is index of industrial production. The name itself is self-explanatory, that show that how much we are producing in our industries. Within this there was a base, or there was a group of industries which were concerned or which were considered as the core industries. So this grouping was of 8 core industries. Recently, one more core industry has been included. What are those 8 core industries? See, for example, natural gas is there, crude is there, coal is there, cement is there, fertilizer is there, electricity is there. So now one more core industry has been added, and that is iron ore, and the weightage of iron ore is roughly 4.9%. There is one more change in IIP. The base year of IIP, similar to GDP, the base year of IIP has been changed to 2022-23. Similarly, the base year of WPI is also changed, and it is same, that is 2022-23. Please remember, the base year of CPI is now changed to 2024, and this is based on the Household Consumer Expenditure Survey. We will cover this in the current affairs section. We have already covered, if you go through the PT 365 document of economy. So we have already covered that. There is one more topic, that is misery index or economic discomfort index. See, when there is a high unemployment rate, that simply means people are not getting job. Apart from that, there is high inflation also. So that simply means the cost of living is increasing. So on one side, people are not having jobs, on another side the cost of living is increasing. This is referred as the misery index or economic discomfort index. That simply means now there are double discomfort. One is discomfort of unemployment, and second is the discomfort of inflation. And the next topic in Indian economy is aggregate demand and aggregate supply. Now let's try to understand it using one simple example. What is aggregate demand? Aggregate demand, I'm just writing it as AD. Okay, so what is aggregate? Aggregate means total. Can I simply say what is the total demand in the economy? This is reflected through AD is equals to C plus I plus G plus X minus M. Just remember, C basically means we are referring to the consumption by the people. So let's say you decided to purchase phone, you decided to purchase clothes. That is demand in economy. I purchased something, you purchased something, your family purchased something. All this is a demand in our economy. So first part of this demand is consumption by people, consumption. Okay, now what is I? I is investment. By whom? By the private players. So it is nothing but consumption by the private sector, private. For example, let's say Ambani, Adani. Let's say Adani Group purchased some item. Let's say for their factory, they purchased steel. So that is a demand in economy. Similarly, if government spent some money on some kind of road infrastructure, so they need raw material. They are going to pay money to the people who are working there. Those people will get money. They will spend that money. That will also create a demand. So this is government side of the demand. And X minus M. What is this X minus M? X is export and M is import. Now, you need to understand one thing. Why we have basically kept it x minus m? Why not m minus x? Understand it this way. Let's say we are exporting. Exporting basically means we are selling something. We are producing it in India and we are selling it abroad. Okay. Now, when we are producing it in India, we are hiring the people. Technically, if we are hiring them, we are going to pay money to them. If we are going to pay money to them, they will spend that money. That will create a demand. That is the concept of x. Why in case of m we are subtracting it? Understand, let's say we are not able to produce these pens in India, okay, and let's say we are importing these pens from China. So when we are importing, technically who is producing these pens? China is producing these pens. Factories in China will generate employment. We are just buying or we are just purchasing this pen. So can I simply say, if I will purchase more and more pen, more and more employment will be generated in China because I am importing it. Now, can I rephrase this statement that had I manufactured this pen within India, I would have generated more jobs? Let's keep it simple. Let's say for one pen, they need 5 workers. So if I am importing one pen, can I simply say I have generated 5 jobs in China? And instead of importing, if we would have produced the same pen in India, we would have created 5 jobs in India. So that is why whenever we import something, technically, we are saying that we are creating jobs for that country. The same jobs could have been created in our country, but we have lost those jobs because now rather than producing within India, we are importing those items. That is the basic concept. Okay, so this is the aggregate demand or the total demand in the economy. Then there is a concept of aggregate supply. Okay, now I am going to use very simple explanation. Understand it this way. There can be 3 situations. Aggregate demand is equals to aggregate supply. Aggregate demand is higher than aggregate supply. Aggregate demand is lower than aggregate supply. Just for the sake of understanding. If both are equal, can I simply say this is in equilibrium? Both are balanced. That simply means, let's consider a very basic example. Let's say in our economy, there is a demand of 10 biscuit packets. So let's say 10 packets biscuit, that is the demand and that is the supply. Both are balanced. Nothing wrong in this case. So what will be the price? Average price will be there. General price will be there. Now let's consider one more example. In this case, the demand is higher than supply. Let's say demand is of 12 packets and the supply is of 10 packets. What will happen in this case? In this case, the demand is higher than supply. So price will increase or decrease? Price will increase. Why? Because more and more people are willing to have that product. Supply is less, just like the flight ticket we have discussed. It will lead to inflation. There is a gap between demand and supply. That's why it is referred as inflationary gap. In this case, understand, demand is lower than supply. Let's say demand is 8 and supply is 10. Okay, now what will happen in this case? Please remember that demand is lower than the supply. So will it lead to inflation or will it lead to deflation? It will lead to deflation. There is a gap between demand and supply. That's why this is referred as deflationary gap. Okay, these are 3 important situations. Now you tell me one thing. Just imagine a scenario in which case the employment opportunity, more and more employment opportunities will be generated. In which case more and more employment opportunities will be generated. So will it be generated in case of equilibrium? Will it be generated in case of a situation that is inflationary gap, or will it be generated in case of deflationary gap? Just think about it. Okay, so these are 3 different scenarios. We have already covered them. First is equilibrium. So if demand, aggregate demand and aggregate supply, if they are equal, then there will be equilibrium. If the aggregate demand is higher than the supply, then there will be inflationary gap. If the aggregate demand is lower than the supply, then in that case, what will happen? That will lead to deflationary gap. Okay, so we have already covered inflationary and deflationary gap. Now understand, before we switch to the Phillips curve, it is quite important for UPSC prelims. We have already seen that if there will be demand, what will happen? The price will increase. Companies will produce more. If they will produce more, they will hire more and more people. If they will hire more and more people, employment will increase, and unemployment, that means joblessness, that will go down. Whenever I am saying employment opportunities will increase, by default unemployment will go down. So can I simply say, just understand it this way. Demand is there. Because of this demand, there is inflation. or price rise is there. This is nothing but inflation. Now, because of this, companies are producing more, produce more. Since they are producing more, the employment will go up. Employment will go up. If employment is going up, the unemployment will go down, right? So can I simply say, in this case, the relationship between inflation, whenever inflation is increasing, the unemployment is declining. This relationship is reflected through Phillips curve. Just have a look at this and have a look at these 2 points. This is point A, this is point B. At point A, what is happening? At point A, the inflation level is high. That means the unemployment in this direction, the unemployment is increasing. So at point A, the inflation level is high, but unemployment level is low. Why it is low? Because when inflation level is high, technically it reflected decent demand. To fulfill that demand, factories will have to produce more. To produce more, they need more workers. If they need more workers, they will hire more workers. That will reduce the unemployment. The moment demand will go down, the price level will also go down, inflation will also go down, and subsequently, now factories need not to produce more. Why? Because the demand has gone down. Try to understand it this way. During COVID, factories produced or companies produced masks. Now COVID is gone. Will they continue to hire workers to produce more masks? Of course not. So those workers will be removed. That will lead to unemployment. So this relationship is reflected through Phillips curve. So we have covered Phillips curve and we have covered the inflationary and deflationary gap. Next topic of this Indian economy is UP, that is liquidity trap and paradox of thrift. Now I'm going to explain it using one simple example. What is liquidity trap? Liquidity in a very simple sense means money. Trap means people are not spending money. Let's try to understand it. The entire assumption of this inflation, employment, demand, everything is there that people will have money. If they will have money, they will spend that money and that will create a demand. What if they don't want to spend money? Or what if they don't want to use that money? Okay. That is referred as a liquidity trap. In a very simple sense, people don't want to give their money. If they don't want to give their money, there won't be that much demand. If there won't be that much demand, why companies will produce more? If they need not to produce more, they will remove the extra workers. That will lead to more unemployment. These unemployed people will not have money. So of course, they will demand less and less. And this is how the entire economy will witness low demand. That situation is referred as a liquidity trap. Then there is one more situation, that is paradox of thrift. Now understand, thrift basically means saving. What is paradox? Paradox basically means we are referring to two contradictory situations, two different situations. Now understand it using one simple example. Let's say people. So there are two different principles, two different theories. One theory simply say that if people will save more, if they will save more money, that simply means they are going to spend less. If they are going to spend less, the demand will go down. Demand will go down. That simply means there will be low requirement to produce. Why companies will produce if the demand is less? So that will lead to low economic growth. That is one side of the theory, low growth. Then there is another school of thought. They say that if people will save more, they will save or they will deposit this money in the bank. If there will be more deposit in the bank, the easy credit will be available. That means cheaper interest based credit will be available because banks are having money. So they will try to offer easy loan, cheaper loan. Now, if they will try to offer easy loan or cheaper loan, what will happen? The businessman will borrow this money and they will set more and more factories. There will be more investment. And if there will be more investment, that will lead to better growth. Better growth. So now understand these two scenarios. Scenario A, this is scenario A, this is scenario B. Scenario A is saying that if people will save more money, it will lead to low economic growth. Scenario B is saying that if people will save more money, it will lead to more growth. So these are two contradictory scenarios. One is saying that the growth will be low. One is saying the growth will be high. Both are saying it will happen because of the same saving. That is why it is referred as a paradox of thrift. Okay, now let's go through the liquidity trap and paradox of thrift. So liquidity trap basically means people prefer to store money rather than spending it. So even if they will have more money, they will not spend it, and therefore, even if monetary authority, that is RBI, try to pump more money in the economy, it will not give us the desired result. Second is paradox of thrift. So that simply means if people will save more and more money, the demand will go down and it will reduce the economic growth. So that is one school. There is a counter argument to this, that if they will save more money, they will deposit that money in the bank. The bank will offer a cheaper credit to the businesses, and therefore they will invest more money. That will lead to more and more demand. So you need to understand these two perspectives. Now coming to this Fisher effect. What is this Fisher effect? Understand it this way. We are saying that, okay, I am giving my money to someone and I am charging the interest of 6%. 6% is the interest. But if the rate of inflation is 4%, so technically what will be the effective interest rate? My interest rate was 6%, inflation rate was 4%, so the effective interest rate will be 2% only. This is basically referred as Fisher effect. So the nominal interest rate which I am charging, that is 6%. Because of inflation, let's say inflation rate is 4%. So what will happen? My real interest rate, that is going to be 2%. In a very simple sense, the real interest rate is the difference between the nominal interest rate and the expected inflation. Now understand it this way. You think that in future the inflation is going to increase. Let's say instead of this 4%, you think that next time the inflation is going to be 8%. This is your expectation, that in future inflation will be high. Now will you give money, your money, to someone at the interest rate of 8% or at the interest rate of 7%? No. Why would you? Because you know that if inflation rate is going to be 8%, you need more than 8%. Then only you will be in a better position. Otherwise, you will be at loss. So in a very simple sense, this principle says that if there is an expectation of high inflation, the lenders will increase the interest rate. That is the concept. So in a very simple sense, this says that the lenders demand higher interest rate if they expect prices to rise. That means if they expect that if in future if there will be higher inflation, they expect more and more interest rate. Next topic is related to fiscal policy and monetary policy. See, whenever there is a term fiscal policy, it refers to the government side. Whenever there is a term monetary policy, it refers to the RBI, that is monetary authority. Okay. So in a very simple sense, monetary policy refers to the policy decisions which are taken by monetary authority, that is RBI. So what kind of policy decision RBI takes? It can either increase money supply or it can reduce it. These are two basic possibilities. How it can increase money supply? By reducing the interest rate. If it will cut down the interest rate, then what will happen? People will borrow more money. In a very simple sense, bank will offer a cheaper credit. Let's say, let me give you a very practical example. Let's say you want to purchase house and you have two scenarios. In one case, the interest rate is 5%. In another case, the interest rate is 12%. In which case, more and more people will borrow money for house? In first case, where the interest rate is lower, right? So similarly, RBI can increase or decrease money supply through this interest rate. This is part of monetary policy. RBI increase money supply. That simply means it is pumping more and more money. More and more money means more and more borrowing. More and more borrowing basically means more and more demand. That will increase the demand of the products, and therefore the companies will have to produce more. This is referred as expansionary monetary policy. Okay, now let's try to understand it using the same example. So RBI, if it increase interest rate, so if it increase interest rate, what will happen? And if it decrease interest rate, what will happen? If it will increase interest rate, please remember, now it will be relatively difficult to borrow money. So what will happen? The money supply, that will go down. If money supply will go down, what will happen? The demand will also go down. If demand will go down, the economy will contract. That's why it is referred as contractionary policy. Now, in what situation RBI is likely to do so? So usually during the time of very high inflation, RBI tend to follow this policy. If RBI is going to decrease the interest rate, what will happen? If it is going to decrease the interest rate, money supply will increase. If money supply will increase, what will happen? It will increase the demand. If demand will increase, what will happen? The economy will expand. And this is why it is referred as expansionary policy. This is by RBI. RBI is our monetary authority. Similarly, if the same thing is being done by government, so we are going to refer them as expansionary monetary policy and contractionary monetary policy. But if similar thing is being done by government, that is referred as fiscal policy. So the fiscal policy can be contractionary or expansionary. How it is going to be contractionary? So contractionary basically means the economy will contract. In which case economy will contract? When the money supply will be less. In which case the money supply will be less? So in a very simple sense, if the government is going to increase taxation, so when government is going to increase taxation, what will happen? People will have less money. If they will have less money, they will spend less. If they will spend less, what will happen? Spend less. If they will spend less, the economy will contract, and that's why it is referred as contractionary fiscal policy. Similarly, in this case, if the tax rate they are gone, now what will happen? People will have more money because they need to pay less taxation, so they will have more money in hands. If they will have more money in hands, they will spend, and if they will spend, the economy will expand, and that's why it is referred as expansionary policy. Now I'm sure you are able to understand this thing. And the last topic of this chapter is the business cycle. So understand, we have discussed that if people will have money, they will spend that money, and therefore demand will increase, companies will produce more. This is a cycle of economic growth. But what if the demand is less? If demand is less, people will spend. In a very simple sense, people are spending less, that's why demand is less. If demand is less, factories will produce less. If they will produce less, they will remove the extra workers. If they will reduce extra workers, the unemployment will increase, and this will lead to less and less demand. So these scenarios are basically reflected through this business cycle. Now let's try to understand it using this example. Okay, when demand is high, everything is going good, this is the time of economic boom. So economic boom is a time when the growth is there, good growth is there. Then if you see that it is going down, this is a time of economic slowdown. Then if you see that now the growth is coming down and down, this is the time of recession. What is recession? If you remember, there's a concept of recess in the school that simply means break. Break what? If our production is going down for 2 consecutive quarters, consecutive basically means back to back. If our production is going down for 2 consecutive quarter is nothing but 1/4 of the year, that simply means a duration of 3 months. So if our production is going down that for 2 consecutive quarters, that is referred as recession. And then there is one more time, that is depression. What is depression? When GDP contract basically means squeeze, GDP contract by 10% or more, that is the time period of depression. Okay, so we have covered 4 scenarios: economic boom, slowdown, recession, and depression. There is one more topic, and that is a meltdown. Meltdown basically means the stock prices are crashing. We are going to cover this meltdown in the securities chapter as well. And with this, we have covered this inflation topic for Indian economy. Now I have added the questions of this in your test portal. Please attempt those questions. Thank you, and that's all for today.